welcome everybody officially. We're excited to kick off this NSHE Corequisite English Faculty Professional Development Series. We've got a lot in store for you today and certainly want to highlight what's to come in this professional development series as we work toward full implementation of Corequisite English across the state. For those of you whom I don't have the pleasure of knowing yet, my name is James McCoy. I serve as the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Student Success at the Nevada System of Higher Ed, and as the Director of Corequisite Implementation. So it has become my job lately to be able to work alongside your colleagues in English who serve on the NSHE Corequisite Task Force, Implementation Task Force, and serve as a liaison between this group and each of the 7 institutions, as well as a liaison to the Chancellor's Office as this work gets underway. And it's really exciting work, it's very rewarding work, and as the task force members can attest, it is very challenging and difficult work. But this task force has been so fully engaged for well over a year, and in some cases, as you know, with pilots, they've been happening for many years. And so I'm really excited to see this full-scale implementation come to fruition. I want to make just a couple of thank you and acknowledgments before we get into the meat of our conversation today. First, I would like to publicly thank the ECMC Foundation and Strong Start to Finish and Complete College America. For each of these organizations have lended some significant resources to Nevada System as well as our institutions. And frankly, ECMC and Strong Start to Finish have funded this professional development series for you, for our English faculty across the state. And they've also, as you know, provided significant resources in institutional grants to support implementation at each institution. So we're very thankful for our partners at ECMC Foundation and Strong Start to Finish. And also a special acknowledgement to Complete College America. We'll hear from Nia from CCA in just a few minutes, but a big shout out to CCA as continued partners in our work, not only with our Corequisite project management associated with the professional development series that we're embarking on today and in the future, but also for their longstanding commitment to our state. We've been involved with CCA work for well over a decade as we all work to focus in on closing achievement gaps and increasing post-secondary success in our state. It would be, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank each and every one of our NSHE English Faculty Corequisite Implementation Task Force members. We will acknowledge each of them by name a little bit later today, but thank you. I know many of you or most of you are on the webinar today, and thank you for helping us to get to this point. Also a special shout out to Elaine Bunker, Evie Buell, and Levia Hayes, who serve on our professional development subcommittee. It is this group of 3 dynamic professionals who have developed this professional development series for all of you. They have solicited from English faculty across the state. Many of you informed the content that is really needed for this PD series moving forward over the next several months. So many thanks to them, and they will be presenting our overview of Corequisite English as it's related to the implementation plan for the bulk of the time today. So with that, I would like to introduce Dr. Nia Haydel from Complete College America. Nia serves as the Vice President for Alliance Engagement and Institutional Transformation, personal friend to Nevada and to me. And Nia, thank you so much for giving us a few minutes of your time today to kind of level us off. And for those that are not familiar with CCA, maybe a couple of remarks about that, and certainly to share your insightful wisdom as we embark on this professional development series. So we'll hand it to you, Nia.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate the time that you're devoting on this Friday afternoon to have this conversation with us about this very important work. As James said, my name is Nia Haydel, and I work with Complete College America. I'm also joined by 2 of my colleagues, Nicholas Hewitt and Brandon Protis. And we are all here to support the great work that you all are doing in Nevada. Y'all have been great partners to us, and we really just continue to appreciate being able to work with you on all the great things that you all are doing in the state. I want to give you just a brief overview about who CCA is, just in case you haven't engaged with us in the past, and so you can have an idea of how we are supporting the work that you're doing. This is our mission. We are bold advocates. We make no apologies for wanting big change across states and systems. And we are really focused on increasing college completion rates and closing equity gaps. And the equity gaps is really important to us because you all know, especially in the work that you're doing, that students don't come to college to fail, right? And the conversation in the past has been that it's been on student achievement gaps. So really it's institutional gaps. And so what are we doing as institutions and systems to be able to support students and to make sure that we are providing the environment for students who are usually the most minoritized by race, socioeconomic status, and maybe adult learners, in positioning them to be able to achieve at the highest levels. So our vision is really that every student who wants to achieve a credential of value, whatever level that is, that they have the opportunity to be able to do that, and that the conditions are present for them to be able to be successful. The vision is that we provide the conditions, because we work with everybody. We want to work with systems, we want to work with policymakers, we want to work with the faculty to see how can we make sure that students and their families are having the opportunity to really successfully complete. And when we say on time, we mean on time in the sense that we are providing students with the information they need to make good decisions. And so for part-time students and full-time students, that may look different, but how are we creating the conditions and the environment in order for them to be able to accomplish their goals? So we've done this through data drives what we do. So we have lots of opinions and experiences that tell us what we need to focus on, but CCA is really based in using data to drive our strategies. We do this through working across our alliance. So we have 47 alliance members. Nevada has been a very strong partner with CCA, and we have really appreciated working with Nevada. And then we use experts throughout the field to be able to execute our work. Your very own James McCoy is one of our CCA fellows, and he assists us with helping to train and develop programs in other states so that people can benefit off the learnings that we have in our various alliance areas. So how we do our work, we have three different foci that we use: policies, conditions, and strategies. So we believe that policy is integral to making change because we want structural change and we really want sustainable efforts. So because we're focused on how do we help as many students as possible, right? And so we know that policy is often a lever that can help us to accomplish that at scale. With the conditions is how are we creating the environment and the conditions that allow us to get our work done. So that happens like what you're doing in this professional development series, creating workshops, using our members to provide support and coaching, because we know this work is not easy and that it is beneficial to be able to rely on each other to get the work done. And then in the pre-COVID environment, we used to get together and have coffee and summits and all kinds of academies, and I'm looking forward to those days coming back. I miss seeing my friends. But we have events where we get to see each other and really talk about in person. Now it's in a virtual space on specific policy levers or specific strategies that are helping to move our agenda. And then the strategy. So I'll show you in the next slide, just assessing what the needs are, knowing that they change depending on where you are. How do we plan to address these needs? And then what is the tactical, actionable approaches we take for implementation? So this is our new framework, refined framework that we shared last week at our CCA week. And this is a sidebar, but we recorded all those sessions. So I'll make sure that James has the links for that because we have a session on CoRec, and so it might be beneficial to you as well. But we use our alliance to be able to improve the completion rate and to really advance the completion agenda. Equity is at the core of what we do, so that's the lens by which we're doing this work. We want to make sure that those who are the most disadvantaged have the best opportunities to be able to move forward, with the ultimate goal being social mobility, economic opportunity, and racial justice. So that is the commitment that CCA has really put into our processes. And the basis of all this is advocacy, data, and research. So one of the things that CCA is here, one way we're here to support you as well, is to advocate for the things that you identify as structural barriers or things that you need. Sometimes we can assist from the outside in advancing agendas and priorities when you might not be able to do that because of various conditions that exist. So we have a network. I think that this is one of the things that we're probably proudest of is the fact that we've built this alliance. And before I was at CCA, I was on a college campus, and the alliance was really beneficial to me because I began to meet people throughout the country who were trying to do some of the same things that I was doing, and I felt comfortable calling them and asking them, hey, how did you address this problem? And so we have the alliance, we have teams in every state, we have fellows and content experts, and then we have, on-campus teams that are working also to move these strategies. And then across the higher ed spectrum ecosystem, we have been really working to identify other people who we will call impatient reformers, who really who are not satisfied with how things have been done and committed to making sure that we improve the conditions for our students. So this is our refined strategy from that we unveiled last week. So the things that are in bold are the game changers, which those are the strategies that were launched from CCA from the beginning. And those things remain prominent in our work. But what we realized, this is how the student experiences education usually. If you look through the different buckets, it's how they are moving through our processes. And what we've decided is that there are 4 primary pillars that really support students: and purpose, momentum, structure, and support. So how are we getting them started? Do they know where they're trying to land? Are we giving them guidance? How do we do that? How do we build momentum? So how do we make sure that there are lots of opportunities for them to gain access? And so you see that co-requisite support really falls into this momentum because it's so critical to getting students going, because oftentimes we know that whether or not students feel that they're college ready depends a lot on how they start the game, right? And so the work that you're doing on co-requisite support is really, really critical, not only because we want them to take less credit, but also because it builds their confidence and their ability to do this work and to be, that they belong where we say that where they are, you know. And then structure. So what are the things that we have put in place to make this process sort of standardized in a format in which they can maneuver and manage? And then what are the wraparound services or the things that we put around them that helps them to optimize on the experience that they had, and then also know where to go if they find that they're having some trouble. And so, and this is, so you'll get more into this later, but we are really, really pleased and excited to be working with you all on this project for the next few months. I mentioned Brandon Protis on the call, and he is our resident expert at CCA on co-requisite. And so he will be here to also answer questions and support you. But please know that CCA is here in the work that you're doing. We appreciate the heavy lift that you're doing in this area, and just very excited to be partners. So thank you very much for inviting us on this journey with you. And then I am going to hand off to Elaine Bunker, who is the Associate Director for Composition at UNLV and a member of the task force. And so she is going to take it from here.
At the English portion of our co-requisite. And one of the things I think is really important, this really is a group effort. It's a collaboration. So notice this slide talks about some of the institutions and the entities that are involved in this. And this particular slide was actually taken from the presentation that was done at the board about staying the course. This has been a very challenging time to make these kinds of changes, but we've been committed to it. And part of what has made that possible is because of the collaboration with good people. And so that's where I wanted to go to. This next slide, James had mentioned about the 3 of us, Livia, Evie, and I, working on professional development. There's actually been more than one professional development subcommittee. We've put together this presentation. There was another group that got together to talk about the full slate of events. There's been a lot of work that has gone into this. And notice there's the note at the bottom of this slide that says that additional English faculty have joined the task force. So this group of names are those who actually put together the action plan we're going to be talking about today. But there have been others that have joined us since then. And so again, we could not list everyone who has been so important in helping this work to go forward. Just a little bit of kind of an overview of how we're going to be doing this. If you have questions or comments along the way, you can please put them in the chat. Livia and Evie will be kind of monitoring that. If there's questions that need to be addressed right away, we can do that. We do have time at the end to address those. And so I'm going to start with talking about kind of the overall action plan, giving kind of an overview of what are the points of consensus that we came to as a group. And notice that there's 3 main areas. There's the placement protocols, the pathways, and the assessment with a focus on continuous improvement. So to start off with, on the placement, one of the things we're looking at is multiple ways of placing students effectively. One of the challenges that we have is that we have very different institutions. Some institutions are very large, some are small. We have different kinds of access to our institutions. And so one of the things that was important to us as we put this together is to recognize that we need to do a better job of placing our students, but that there would not be one model that would work for every institution. So Olivia and Evie will get into a little bit of that at some of their institutions. But again, we looked at kind of a menu of here's some options. Starting again with the first one that's actually in the Board of Regents handbook about standardized test scores, but we did not want to limit ourselves to that. The second area is the pathways. All of us have English 101, so that is a common pathway. But as we're applying co-requisite support, we are doing that in different ways. Many institutions are doing a 5-credit 100 that embeds the co-requisite support into the same course. The 2 universities are doing an approach where we're having a gateway course that's 3 credits with co-requisite labs. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And then the continuous improvement, again, goes back to assessment. And we're looking at assessment in the truest sense of the word, that we're not looking just to validate what we've done or pat ourselves on the back or to be punitive if something goes wrong. We really do want to see what is working, how do we share those best practices, what is not working, how do we problem solve and improve. So going on to one of the things that we did as a group is we had consensus in what should be our student learning outcomes. Now I'm sure that for many of you, these 4 areas will look familiar. They come from the WPA outcomes for first year's writing. We purposely kept things broad because we do recognize that there are different missions at the different institutions. So for example, at the community colleges, sometimes they need to make research part of 101 because there may be students who won't get it elsewhere. But we have these common values and goals that we're looking for that students need to achieve in their gateway courses. In the co-requisite support, one of our areas of agreement was that areas that students often need that extra support is in critical reading and in their editing skills, and looking at editing skills kind of broadly as well, that sometimes that can be even organizationally or structurally, how did they go back and revise and understand their writing. Again, assessment is going to be a key part of this. One of the things that was very important to us is that as we're looking at the curriculum, that we maintain those decisions and that assessment at the faculty level, at the institutions. So again, we came up with principles of what would guide our assessment, but with the understanding that faculty would be driving that process, but relying on the system office to help us as we gather data for the success of the program as far as it goes with things like retention, completion, and progression, and also to help us as we're sharing information across the system. As I said previously, we really want to be making sure that we're helping each other to solve problems and identify best practices. Okay, so that's kind of the broad overview. Did we have any questions that we needed to address at this point? Okay, I'm seeing heads shaking no. So I will keep moving forward. So as I said, at the universities, we are both working, both Reno and UNLV are working with a 3+1+1 model, but we are building on different strengths. So for example, at UNR, and I know we've got people here on the call who know more about this than I do, but they've got a strength in their writing center that has developed programs over time, and they are able to do their support labs through the writing center. For us at UNLV, we are making some transitions in our writing center, have a wonderful new director, but we're not at a position right now where we could go with that kind of support. So we're doing more classroom support for our support modules. One of the other differences is Reno is having a dedicated course for the co-requisites, the 100I. UNLV, we're planning to have all students enroll in the 101, some with a co-requisite lab, others without it. And the reason I wanted to point out this, because again, we won't be able to go through every single school's specific implementation plan. But just to kind of highlight how we have common pathways, but we have different ways that we can implement those pathways. And I think that's one of the strengths of the collaboration we've done, is that we have a unity of vision of what we're trying to accomplish, but also an understanding that our different schools and our different faculty have different strengths and different challenges. And so that flexibility in order to really maximize the benefits to our students is very important. And at that, I will turn the time over to Livia.
All right, I'm gonna make sure I'm unmuted here. Okay, so of course, the College of Southern Nevada in Clark County. And if anybody watched, even 5 minutes of news today, you probably heard Clark County mentioned because, I didn't do this myself, but according to this, 2/3 Nevada residents live in Clark County. So that would probably explain why College of Southern Nevada has such a huge population. In just the English department, we serve between 10 and 12,000 students in fall and spring each. We have a big faculty. We have 70 full-time instructors and about 130 adjuncts. That number fluctuates, but that's about the standard number. So we have a lot of bodies, a lot of students to serve, and a lot of teachers to serve them. And of course, we're going to be needing more teachers moving forward. But this is what we're working with right now. Okay, can I have my next slide? All right, so I think it's important for folks to understand what we're doing about placement to figure out who belongs in our co-rec class. Our co-rec classes will be English 100. We've had English 100 at CSN for over a decade. We've always offered that class for the more at-risk English freshman comp students. Students can test into English 100 or they can self-select. So in the past, we had a lot of students who tested into 101 who self-selected into English 100 because they wanted that extra help. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So we've had English 100 for a long time, but now with the co-rec, looking at English 100 as the class that will also remediate those at-risk students, more at-risk students than what we've had in the past, we're really looking at the curriculum for English 100 and how we can best help our students. And one big change from the way we've been teaching English 100 is that we're going to be having embedded tutors. Our goal is to have an embedded tutor in every English 100 class by fall 21 when full implementation of the co-rec model begins. We are piloting that now. We piloted embedded tutors in the summer. We've actually exhausted all of the everything our for academic success has as far as funds and tutors. We did get some grant money that we were using for tutors, and so our director for student success is pretty excited that she'll get to hire some more students. So placement is, we do use Right Placer, but we're trying to expand to multiple measures where we're looking at high school records. I did look at high school records quite a bit over the summer, being that a lot of our students were not able to take the placement test due to COVID and restrictions with College Board as far as having proctors on the tests. There was a shortage of proctors. So I used high school records, and we're also considering maybe using some of guided self-placement. That guided self-placement was kind of scary to me, but in conversations that I've had with Ed, how she uses it, it actually does like a tool that we might be able to utilize to help us place our students. I realized that I kind of unofficially had done a little bit of that guided self-placement over the summer. I had students that couldn't take the test and didn't have high school records because they were, past that. And so I just kind of asked them a series of questions, and that's basically what they do at GVC. So we find ways to place them. We're going to keep track of where they place and how they do. As I said, we use English 100 will be our co-rec class, and we're going to use embedded tutors to assist them, which goes to the assessment, because there are a lot of things we want to assess. We want to assess the outcomes-based learning. Obviously, we also want to look at our course outcomes a little bit closer. Are they meeting the needs of these students? Now we have some that have more remediation needs. Also, we will assess how it's working with our tutors. We need a professional development for our tutors. What can we do to make our tutors the best that they can be? And the tutors are excited about that too. So that's basically our plan going forward. 21, full implementation. We're almost there now. We have very few remedial students still in remedial courses, but they will be disappearing this summer. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to a much smaller school, which this has been fascinating, comparing notes with Evie with her small school at Great Basin. So Evie, I'm not sure, I don't really know what your title is at your school. So you'll have to share that with us.
I'll do so. Hi, everyone. My name is Evie Buell. I'm chair of the Arts and Letters Department and an English professor at GBC. I'm also the co-coordinator for composition this year. And before I get rolling too far, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention two things. One is that with our slide earlier mentioning task force members, I didn't check it to include Dr. Josh Webster, my colleague at GBC, who has provided invaluable insight throughout this process. So sorry, Josh, I know you're on this call. The other is that you'll notice that I've left a blank line here on this slide, and that's intentional because I've been struggling to come up how to define this small school notion. Initially that said northern schools. We are in Pahrump as well, there's that issue. But I did want to mention probably the school we have most in common with in the system, and that's our friends at Western Nevada College. If any of you are here, just wanted to say a big thank you to you as well for the collaborations over the course of the last year, how we've been able to learn from each other. Specifically, I wanted to thank Jessica Rowe from the task force for her insights as we bounced ideas for guided self-placement and the like off of each other. So we have a very interesting system here in NC, don't we? When we look at the types of institutions that we have. And coming into GBC in 2016, I realized I was in a very different environment, perhaps than I was used to. I was at a couple of different universities prior to here. And GBC is kind of hard to put your finger on, because you can call us a two-year institution, but we offer four-year degrees, including in English. You could say that we're a northern school, but we're also in Pahrump, and we're in Ely, and all these other places. And I started to look at the other institutions, and we're all really hard to kind of pigeonhole that way. I know WNC has multiple campuses, so does TMCC. Nevada State College is in a unique situation as well. So we have challenges, each one of us, for trying to implement something in a common way, because we have differences in student bodies and the natures of our campuses, in modality of delivery. There were a lot of things to coordinate here other than just saying, hey, pick one, English 100 or a different kind of 101. There were a lot of pieces that I don't think most of us anticipated when we started this process. So at GBC, we kind of accidentally backed into this ahead of the mandate. And I say that because for fall of 2017, we started teaching English 100 again. It had been on the shelf for a few years, and gave it another try. It seemed like a good pathway when you looked at success rates for developmental courses not being there. And of course, that's one of the reasons we're doing this, is because I believe one of the statistics that was shared with us is that success rates for students in developmental courses is sub 15%. It wasn't working. So we tried this in fall of 2017. In fall of 2018, we realized we had a problem, and that is we coded the class wrong. That's not the fault of anyone in our admissions and records office. That was our fault in the department. We didn't put any prereqs on it. And so students weren't taking any placement exams, anything. We're just coming in. Went, oh no, this is why we have suddenly 200 students when we were expecting 30 this term. And as it turned out, the success rates were actually pretty good in this accidental guided self-placement. And what we've done as a result is we've cleaned up a few of the issues related to how we're guiding students into courses, but we removed our placement exam. We removed AccuPlacer because the indicators it was giving were just simply not consistent enough, we found to be useful. And we created a set of questions to give to our advisors now that the system has gone to mandatory advising. Having the advisors make that point of contact made a great deal of sense, and we kept it simple. And so far, that has proved, generally speaking, quite effective. And Josh Webster, as he's pointed out to all of us in the task force, said it's a gap, not a gulf, between our English 100 and our English 101 students. And guided self-placement, so far, that's playing out. Now, full implementation is set for fall of 21, but we've gone ahead and eliminated our developmental courses this year. So we're kind of treating this as a full run. And so we're very much looking forward to seeing what the outcomes are. For our pathways, like the other two-year institutions, we are offering English 100 as a 5-credit course and English 101 as a 3-credit course. We do have some challenges there with embedded support because even prior to this pandemic thing that you may have heard about, we were already 65% online. How do we embed effectively within that environment and consistently with the resources, frankly, of a small school? So that has proved to be one of the challenges that COVID has kind of exacerbated to a certain extent. Can we hit the next one, Elaine? And so our challenges are that we deliver in a whole bunch of different modalities. Before it used to be online, IAV, or live, or what we had, IAV being interactive video to a variety of campuses, but simultaneously taking place in the classroom. And then of course, hybrid in both synchronous and asynchronous formats. Finding embedded support to work consistently across all of these, to have consistent tutoring, equal achievement in SLOs, is one of those challenges that we're going to see play out with the data. And then looking ahead to assessment, portfolio assessment is already a component of our general education program, and that's something that we're still fine tuning. So we're looking forward to working with that sampling of student work that's already in the works amongst the task force to see how this can come together. So all in all, for the fill in the blank schools, however you want to put that, it's been an interesting challenge. And there are a lot more pieces to doing something that seems relatively simple. But overall, when you look at what the rates of success were in developmental courses, and for those students making it all the way through to graduation versus what we're trying to do now, it's most certainly worth the effort. And I should also point out, if you have any questions, please feel free to fill them in the chat. We're all monitoring that too, so we're happy to talk about this.
Okay, and while you're thinking, if you have any questions, I do want to look ahead to some of our professional development. Today is kind of just a kickoff to give an overview for those who've not been as aware. And again, I know we have a lot of people on the call who have been very involved in this, but that we do have 2 coming up this fall that we're very excited about. Heidi Estrom and Joy Palmer from Idaho. Their state has gone through something fairly similar to what we have, including some of the emotional labor that's involved in it. And so to get some of their perspectives, how do we approach this in the classroom? How do we solve some of the placement challenges? I think these will be very valuable. So as much as you're able to come back next week and for the one in December, and try and encourage others as well, because these are really going to be great foundational webinars to kind of help us understand what are some of the new tools and skill sets we can use as strategies to be successful in some of these new endeavors, or those who've already been doing English 100, how to make it even more successful. And I just want to add my apology too to the people like Josh, who I got left off the slide. And it goes back to, there's so many people. I saw Cassandra's on here, Laura's on here, and in mentioning them, I'm probably leaving somebody else off. That it's been a fluid, people coming in and out, and it really is a team effort, including, and that's why I hope we actually do have a few questions to end off with, because we're doing this all very quickly under incredible constraints. And so we all know that we do not have a perfect plan figured out. We're not even sure we have a good plan figured out. We have the best plan we can at this point. And so as just with any kind of, we're writing teachers, any kind of draft, you need feedback to see what are you missing, how do you improve it, how do you revise, And we really are going to count on all of our faculty to help us to sort that out. And on that, did we get any questions in our chat?
Says, will we need to pre-register for these presentations like for this one? James?
You bet. Our friends at Complete College America, particularly Brandon, who is serving as our liaison, is creating registration portals and Zoom rooms for all of these. And so for the ones that are coming up here immediately, that invitation will go out to everyone here, if not today, certainly by Monday morning.
Okay, do we have any more questions?
I should point out that one of the comments was leave plenty of time for questions.
Yeah.
But if people, you know, fade out early, that wouldn't be the worst thing. But come on, anything you want to know at this, please.
Here.
Can I just throw out there that one of the reasons I wanted to stop sharing is that even though some of you aren't on camera and I see just names, there's so many people out there that I'm like, yay, friends. That's one of, again,
a long time.
that all of these projects are so wonderful. Even when the work is stressful, the opportunity to interact with such fabulous colleagues across the system, that has been a blessing to me.
We do have another question.
Yep.
Classroom report support for teaching critical reading. In addition to our on-campus reading liaisons, what can this task force provide? Any recommendations? Well, if I can just answer for CSN, Laura, just before I came into this meeting, I had just been writing an email to our reading specialist, Colleen, telling her that we're going to want to meet with her to talk about trainings, to talk about our curriculum, because I feel like we need to look at our outcomes and we need to have at least one really robust reading outcome. And I think it would be a good idea for our embedded tutors to have some instruction in how to help students with reading. I mean, this is just off the top of my head what I kind of came up with to start the conversation with Colleen, but I will be bringing her into our English task force at CSN to discuss that. What can a larger group talk about reading?
Well, I will just throw out, we do have a webinar planned for February, specifically on reading strategies. So stay tuned.
Great. Let's see, we have a couple more. What is the success rate of community colleges practicing similar collaborative strategies? Now, I know some of the folks here know some of these numbers better than I do about other colleges like Citrus College that we visited. Can someone tell me the success rates of the other schools?
I can tell you a little bit. When attending the CAP conference in Sacramento before the world ended in March, a lot of the success rates that were being mentioned were in the range of 40 to 50% improvements over what they were seeing. So I do remember from one of the sessions I attended, they were looking at a little over 60% graduation rate from that group, which is obviously much better than we were seeing with developmental. And of course, though, one of the things that goes along with that is funding, is being able to drop funding all over this. And we're in a challenging fiscal environment right now. So it's going to be a matter of squeezing everything we can out of the resources we have.
Let's see, Karen Lang has put up a question. What's the current success rate for English 100 students of color? That's a great question. As far as I know, we have not at CSN looked at the demographics of the success rates. I know that Deborah Berry's here at the meeting. She's going to kill me. Do you know if we've, Deborah's a good stats person. Do you know if we've looked at any stats like that, Deborah?
Not for a while. For a while, I was looking at statistics, and then for a whole lot of reasons, mostly because I just couldn't by myself.
Sure.
So I stopped looking at the statistics. But even when I was looking at the statistics, at the time,
just make sure that they're able to. Oh,
I didn't have access to anything that would have allowed me to break down
Sure.
the basic demographics. At this point, if we ask the right question to IR could give us statistics, but we have to define carefully what we mean by success rate. But at this point, our IR could give us that statistic if we ask the question right.
Okay, well, that's thing that we'll pay attention to and look at as part of our assessment plan to see.
Can I jump in real quick? This is Brandon Protis from Complete College America. And Nevada as a state is adopted the Post-Secondary Data Partnership, or the PDP. And the reason I mention it is it pulls data from all of the institutions and it rolls up to the state level. And depending on how they submit, because you can also submit years in the past, which I believe Nevada is, but I don't want to speak for you. It has measures that specifically look at pass rates in the remedial classes and then college entry level foundational English classes like English 100 or 101. And when you get that, you're able to disaggregate along multiple lines. So it's not just race or gender, but you can do it across race and gender and age to be able to look at those trends.
And just to follow up on that really quickly, we just went through our accreditation site visits within the last couple of months, and disaggregating data along these lines is also a very big deal to the accrediting bodies at this point. So I think in addition to getting that information for courses like English 100, we're going to see that across our institutions. It's something that I'm working with our IR person to help formulate, but we're moving around some data sets to try to sift that out of there.
I mean, I'm going to jump in as well. As the task force members are fully aware, we have developed a very robust assessment plan to discern the level of efficacy around this policy. And there's success metrics that are specific to English, Gateway English, and with or without support. And in every one of there must be at least 20 metrics. Every one of those metrics are disaggregated by ethnicity, by gender, by socioeconomic status as reported through Pell status, and by age, and institution type, and institution, et cetera. And so we'll be able, to everyone's point, and rightfully so, drill down to these levels and really look at some of these achievement gaps that have persisted for years. And as we all work together, I mean, that's the whole point of this, right? Is to continuously improve and create systems in this curriculum approach that are going to not just benefit everybody, but benefit everybody equally. And that might mean the approach we take needs to be equitable, not necessarily from an equality standpoint. And so it's such a valuable question. I know each of the institutions are certainly looking at it from this lens, which is terrific. And I know our Board of Regents is looking at it from this lens as well.
I do have a question we haven't addressed, we kind of have, but how have you been looking at assessing student learning outcomes with regard to COREC? So I'm not 100% asking here. I mean, obviously we're going to assess learning outcomes, but I don't know, Elaine, at UNLV, they're going to take these little lab classes. How will those classes be assessed?
For us, and again, this is one of those loosely defined right now. We'll get better as we figure it out. We really are looking at the support classes as being support. So we're setting them up as pass-fail classes, which is not to be interpreted as being dumbed down curriculum, but rather that we are looking at topics that often in a 101 class, we have to kind of zoom through because there's so much to cover, and exploring them in more detail to give students that additional instruction and application time. So our assessment is going to be really in our students' success in 101. So we have the 101, at least that's how we're envisioning it at this point, that we have the 101 objectives that all students, those who have the co-requisite support and those who do not, we're going to be expected to achieve. And if our co-requisite courses are working well, then our students who need that additional support will be performing at the same level or perhaps even better than the students who do not have that support. So it's that core 101 assessment that will drive so much of the other things that we're looking at.
And I don't know about you, but I assume we're all going to track students and see, you know, do they go to 102? How do they do in 102? Or do they graduate? That kind of thing.
Well, and that was one of the things, remember, we asked on the assessment plan is to include how are they doing in subsequent classes as part of
Right.
how do we measure the success? Because
Right.
just enrolling in 102, if they're not successful there, is not success.
So we do all have plans, but they may change. We're keeping it fluid.
Question
Oh,
just
you see
popped.
another question.
Yeah, just popped in. When looking at high school records, how will we account for grade inflation in the students who were passed because the teachers did not want to deal with them? That's probably a better question for maybe for you, Lavia,
Yeah.
especially with the multiple measures. For us, with the guided
Yeah.
self-placement, it kind of accounts for that.
Well, we're not just, so one thing about the looking at school records, so this has been the rule of thumb, is we don't just look at their English grades, but we look at their overall grades as well. And if there's a question with either one, then we need something else. And again, this is multiple measures. I don't foresee high school records as being the only way we place when we're not in a pandemic and quarantine. That would just be possibly one piece. I mean, right now, they're all still taking ACTs. That could be an indicator. And the guided self-placement idea, along with high school records, could tell us a lot too. So we're still playing with this, but I fully feel you. That has been a concern, but so far, the students I have placed with high school records are doing really well. We're also experimenting with that with Jumpstart right now. So, and we have a dedicated Jumpstart person who's working with us. So right now, this semester, every student in Jumpstart got placed with their high school records. So we're going to see how that worked. They can be our guinea pigs.
To piggyback off of that, Bruno, to address some of your question there from our perspective, one of the challenges we have is our high dual enrollment population. And the result of that is we frequently have incomplete high school records, especially when some of them are notably much younger. So we're in the process of kind of developing a customized version of EdReady for our students younger than 16 to get a good sense of where they are versus, and getting them to a point for where they need to be, just so that we aren't throwing them in the deep end without having even the adequate high school experience to get to where they need to be.
We're looking at EdReady at CSN as well. We're looking at it very closely.
And just to throw in, I think that's part of where the differences in institutions is so important to recognize. Because, for example, we don't have the same kind of dual enrollment issues at UNLV, but one of our differences is that our students are all placed into their classes by their advisors, often without consultation with the student first. So a true directed self-placement would not work for us for that reason. But at least in the short term, we're exploring, we have a portfolio that we've used in the past. It was too labor intensive for the numbers that we're looking at that we may have. But so we're having students write a reflective letter that would include some information about their high school GPA, their experiences with writing, their attitudes, that we're using to assign a score to that their advisors can use to place them. But that score is going to be largely impacted by what our students tell us, and both through the writing that they do, but we all know that one sample of writing is not a good indicator. So it's the information is a very important aspect of that. So the student who really wants to be in 101 is probably going to be more successful than the student who is tentative and feels like they need the extra support. I also have a question about the 113 factoring into the co-requisite model. One of the arguments that we successfully made is that students who are English language learners should not be considered remedial. And so they are not impacted by this policy. Individual institutions may be doing some evolving things just on their own curricular initiative, but that is not directly impacted by this policy.
Okay, and if I can just add, just today, I had a conversation with our ESL department about our 113 and the possibility of putting a lab on the 113 so that those students that were, we've had an issue with a lot of ESL students in our remedial classes. And with remedial classes gone, the question is, what are we going to do with these students that really, they're maybe 1.5 or for some reason are resistant to being in an ESL class? this could be an answer. We're exploring it. We're exploring the idea of adding a lab to 113 for some students, maybe having something for them. That's really just very early days. We just started that discussion today, but at CSM, we may have something for 113 students that will help out those more at risk.
I want to thank Elaine and Levia and Evie for your work in putting this presentation together. So bravo, good job, very well done. And many thanks, as everyone has alluded to our task force that has had just a variety of membership over this last year plus experience. And this work would not have been done, particularly given where Elaine started this conversation, where we've decided as a state to stay the course, but we could only do that through collaboration. So many thanks to our task force members. Also, many thanks to our friends at Complete College America for serving as our project manager as it relates to this professional development. We've got, as you recall, a couple of series coming up. In fact, November 13th, 1 to 3, and December 11th, 1 to 3. And then we'll pick it up again in February with at least 2 sessions each month, February, March, and April. That information will go out to you again here shortly. And we'll call it a day. So with that, thank you so much. And we'll see you next time.